In this episode, we're going to talk about the Zoom H4N. As I mentioned in the gear video that covers the Nikon D7000 and 7200, the 7000 actually didn't have an audio headphone jack, so I couldn't monitor audio. So that pushed me to buy my first Zoom H4N. Actually, I didn't buy it, I got it for Christmas. I wanted it for Christmas, and I got it, which was really great. So the Zoom H4N is the sound recorder that we use for all our video productions. So the thing that we use the Zoom H4N is we use it on all our productions and we use it as our audio recorder. So what that means is that we usually run the microphones into the Zoom H4N, and that's our main audio source. And then we sometimes use it at events as an audio recorder for the feed from the board. So we'll actually get a feed from the sound guys at the event and we'll plug that directly into the Zoom H4N and record it for our audio for the event. All right, so what does our setup look like for the H4N? Pretty simple. We usually have our microphones, and our main microphone are the wireless G3 Sennheiser microphones. We plug those into the XLR inputs into the Zoom H4N. We put the Zoom H4N onto a clamp onto our tripod so our camera operator, Tim, or whoever, can watch the audio while they're recording. Now, a lot of times what we'll also do is we'll run the headphone output into the input of our main camera. So there's two reasons we do that. One, we're getting backup audio, so we're recording to the Zoom H4N and we're recording to our main camera. And two, a lot of times the audio that's coming into the camera from the H4N actually sounds really good, and we just use that as the main audio in our production. All right, so what do we like about the Zoom H4N? Well, first of all, it's a really nice way to get into sound recorders because it's pretty cheap. At the time that we bought it, I think it was about $250, and I think today it's actually even hard to get the original H4N. I think B&H Photo might be selling it for $159 American. I'm not sure, but it is pretty cheap and it's a great way to get into audio recorders. The second thing I really like about the H4N is the number of inputs you have. So you have XLR inputs, you have 1/4-inch inputs, which is great, which work for instruments. You have the onboard microphones on the H4N itself, and then you also still have a stereo 3.5mm input just on the underside of it. So you have a lot of input options, which is really, really nice. The microphone on board is actually decent, so if you're really out of luck and all you have is your Zoom H4N, but you don't have another microphone, the onboard mics are actually very decent. I've actually used them for a couple recordings, and they don't sound too bad. At one point, I even put the Zoom H4N on top of a DSLR and used it almost like a onboard microphone, and that was actually pretty good as well. Just like a monitor, it's nice to have a dedicated device to do something. So a monitor gives you dedicated monitoring. To have a separate device for dedicated audio is really, really nice. So to have all your controls for audio, adjusting the recording level, to see a big screen with meters on it, that's really nice to have a dedicated device just for audio. The battery life is great. You can put 2 AA batteries in it, and they have something that's called stamina mode. So when you're inserting the batteries, there's a little switch that you can switch to stamina mode. Now stamina mode, it reduces the amount of bit rates that you can select. It doesn't allow you to do full 4 multi-track recording. It only allows you to either do the 2 onboard mics or the stereo mic or the 2 XLR inputs. Now most of the time we're just recording 1 channel, so stamina mode works fine. So 2 AA batteries in that, and it lasts a really, really long time. We use Amazon rechargeable high capacity batteries, and they work really, really well for a really long time. The last thing I'll mention is that the Zoom H4N is just a really great pairing with a DSLR. DSLRs traditionally don't have great audio, and sometimes, like the D7000, don't have a headphone jack. So if you have a DSLR and you're looking for a great audio source, the Zoom H4N is definitely a great purchase. All right, what don't we like about the H4N? When I first got the H4N, I was really happy with the sound I was getting. It was the first time I had an audio recorder. But as time went on, I became more critical of sound, and one thing that is definitely very noticed on the original Zoom H4N is the loud preamps. And this kind of manifests itself in hiss. So anytime we record audio, yes, the audio sounds pretty good, but there's definitely a hiss that you hear in the audio. Now, what's great is that this can be covered up when you put music, in your videos, or you have something else going on, you don't hear it as much. Or if you can, have this consistent hiss that's going through, you don't really notice it as much. But if you're just listening to the audio by itself, you definitely hear a hiss. And that's why I'm kind of excited about these new recorders that are coming out that have low noise preamps. Now, we mentioned that this thing has a lot of great inputs. You have the onboard mics, you have a 3.5mm jack, you have XLR, and you also have TRS input, which is really, really great. So the flexibility in inputs is really, really nice. What I don't like though is you can't select what level those are at. So for example, the XLR input is only mic level, and the 1/4 inch input is what I hear is called instrument level, which is kind of, I guess, halfway between mic and line level. Not exactly sure about that, but it's not selectable. So when we're getting feeds, for example, an XLR feed from a board, which is at line level, I have to turn my volume way down because it's way too hot, right? So there's things like that. Or, for example, if I'm plugging in a 1/4 inch mic into the instrument level, the level is way too low. You can't hear it that well, which is really not good. So yes, there are flexible input options, but they're all fixed to certain levels, either mic level or line level or instrument level. Not that I've actually used a lot of other recorders, but one thing I've heard that's a big complaint about the H4n is there's not a lot of gain. A very popular mic amongst video enthusiasts is the Rode NTG2, which requires a lot of gain. And we actually tried the NTG2 with the H4n and had really bad results. And it turns out because the H4n doesn't have enough gain to actually get some decent sound out of that microphone. So definitely not a lot of gain on this Zoom H4n, so definitely something to be mindful of. The last thing I'll mention is that we've had a problem with our Zoom H4n that we think we've isolated to not using an improved SD card. But what we don't like about it is we don't get any warning about this. So we were using some lower class SD cards that were not on Zoom's approved list. And every now and then we would completely lose a file. We would record for like, half an hour or something like that, or even 10 minutes. And we would put the SD card onto our computer and the file just wasn't there. It wasn't even a corrupted file. There was no warning. It just wasn't there. And this happened a couple of times for sure. So much so that we were worried, so we were constantly running the backup into our camera. So definitely an issue. Now since then we contacted Zoom and they recommended using one of their approved cards. So we did that and we haven't run into the problem since. But the fact that it wouldn't even let you know that there was a problem was very scary for sure. Just some notes if you're considering purchasing the H4n. Well, the H4n is so old that it basically is hard to find. It's hard to get on sale. They've come out with the new version called the H4n Pro. And the biggest thing that they've changed on that is the preamps. And I haven't used it myself, but apparently they're a lot lower noise. Check out other YouTube videos. Check out Curtis Judd's review of the H4n Pro, for example. There's supposed to be a lot better preamps. And the price is still not that bad. I think Canadian, it's about $279. So really good. If you're considering buying the H4n, you probably won't be able to find it, so buy the H4n Pro. You should also consider some of the other ones on the market, like the H5 or the H6. And sound devices and Zoom themselves are coming out with slightly higher end recorders like the F4, the F8, or the Sound Devices Mix Pre series. Those are really good recorders as well. But they start to get into the $800 or $1,000 range. This is the nice $200 range. So if you're looking for something like that, take a look at the H4n Pro. But that being said, we still use the original H4n in 2018 and are still pretty happy with it. All right, that's it for this overview, guys. If you have any questions at all, leave them in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel because we're going to be covering all our gear in the future. All right, that's it for this one. We'll see you in the next one.
I'm chilling.